Hi, this is HL from thehollywoodliberal.com, and welcome to my NBC News Raw vlog. That's a video blog, and we are from thehollywoodliberal.com. We do a political news commentary and comics and other things every week. We're going to talk about some of the stories that we ran with last week and what we're following up on and what we're going to be doing this week coming up. Our first story that we posted yesterday concerns the Scooter Libby trial, and it's titled, "Who Leaked on Libby? Rove, Cheney, or Both?" It's a story from AP that's titled, "Trial Exposes White House Crisis Machine." And here's a little excerpt from the AP story. Washington. David Addington, chief legal advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney, says he was taken aback when the White House started making public pronouncements about the CIA leak investigation. In the fall of 2003, President Bush's press secretary was categorically denying that either Karl Rove or I. Louis Scooter Libby was involved in exposing the identity of Valerie Plame, a CIA agent married to a critic of the war in Iraq. "Why are you making these statements?" Addington asked White House Communications Director Dan Bartlett. "Your boss is the one who wanted them," Bartlett replied, referring to Cheney. "That's when I shut up," Addington recalled recently for jurors in Libby's CIA leak trial, which began its fourth week on Monday with Libby's lawyers calling their first witness. The White House denies on behalf of Rove and Libby came just before Rove secretly began acknowledging to the FBI that he had confirmed Plame's identity for conservative columnist Bob Novak, who first published her name and her relationship to Wilson. Now, my take on this story is that Libby is on trial for perjury regarding statements that he made about Valerie Plame while working for the CIA. It's apparent that Libby, along with Rove and Cheney, were involved in leaking the information. No one has been charged with the leak. So who leaked the story to Libby? Was it Cheney, Rove, or both? And how much did George Bush know about this? This whole thing could unravel just like Watergate did. That is, if Special Prosecutor Patrick Fitzgerald has an interest in justice and not just convicting one patsy for lying about the same crime that no one was ever charged with. Okay, our second story. Blogger still in jail after 171 days. This is a story I saw in the LA Times, which we followed earlier, about a month or two ago. It's from Washington. Freelance videographer Josh Wolf denied a federal grand jury's order in July to hand over raw footage to anarchists clashing with police in San Francisco. He said he was protected by the First Amendment. A federal judge said he was in contempt of court. On August 4th, the 24-year-old blogger reported to the federal detention facility in Dublin, California. He's been there ever since, except for a period in September when he was freed while a three-judge panel on the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled on the legality of his incarceration. The panel upheld it. As of Tuesday, he's been incarcerated longer than any journalist in modern U.S. history. Wolf's mother, a third-grade teacher from Whitewood, will be on Capitol Hill today to lobby members of Congress to help free her son. Liz Wolf-Spader, who also plans to push for a federal shield law that would protect mainstream journalists as well as independent journalists and bloggers like her son. "I'm asking they treat independent journalists the same way they treat journalists who work for the Hearst Corporation," she said, referring to the company who owns the San Francisco Chronicle and other newspapers. Well, being a blogger myself, I'd have to agree with Ms. Wolf-Spader. Bloggers and independent journalists should be given the same rights as big-time newspaper reporters. Bloggers have influenced mainstream media to the point where only 2 years ago they were still fawning all over Bush. However, the constant stream of information coming out of blogs about Bush's administration and the Iraq War forced the MSN to take a good look at stories that could no longer be ignored. Thanks partially to that, the Republicans were voted out last November and Bush's approval ratings are at an all-time low. It would have been nice if the MSM would have taken the same stance on Bush before the 2004 elections as they did after. So why shouldn't bloggers be afforded the same rights as journalists that work for Fox News or New York Times? Nowadays, the bloggers are more credible. Which brings us right to our next story called "New York Times Once Again Lies for Bush, Who's Itching to Attack Iran." This is a story out of editor and publisher. NYT reporter who got Iraqi WMDs wrong now highlights Iraq claims. And here's an excerpt. Saturday, New York Times features an article posted at the top of its website late Friday that suggests very strongly that Iran is supplying the deadliest weapons aimed at American troops in Iraq. The author notes any assertion of the Iranian contribution to attacks on Americans in Iraq is both politically and diplomatically volatile. What is this source of this volatile information? Nothing less than civilian and military officials from a broad range of government agencies. Sounds pretty convincing, huh? Well, most all of the sources in the story are unnamed. It also may be worth noting that the author is Michael R. Gordon of the New York Times, the same reporter who, on his own, with Judith Miller, wrote some of the key and badly misleading or downright inaccurate articles about Iraqi WMDs in the run-up to the 2003 invasion. This leads right to one more story that we ran with earlier this week. Bush's defense industry buddies ordering new yachts. And it's from AP once again. Defense energy companies stand to benefit from budget. Lockheed Martin Corporation, Northrop Grumman Corporation, Textron, Boeing, and European Aeronautic Defense and Space Company all would get a boost. They're talking, of course, about the new budget that Bush unveiled this week, which is all about war and nothing to do with the people of the United States. The largest programs of Bethesda, Maryland-based Lockheed Martin, the world's #1 defense contractor, were almost fully funded. That includes $6.1 billion for the Joint Strike Fighter, its largest weapons program, and a $4.6 billion to buy 20 Lockheed F-22A Raptor fighters. Democratic Representative Ike Skelton of Missouri, chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, called the defense request staggering and promised due diligence in scrutinizing the budget. Now, I looked into this a little bit because I was wondering what kind of connections the Bush-Cheneys may have had to the companies, and it took me about 2 seconds to come up with this answer. There's a story in the Huffington Post called Lizzie Cheney, the pride of Lockheed Martin speaketh. And here's an excerpt from that, including Dick Cheney's son-in-law, Philip J. Perry, a registered Lockheed lobbyist who had, while working for a law firm representing Lockheed with the Department of Homeland Security, had been nominated by Bush to serve as General Counsel of the Department of Homeland Security. His wife, Elizabeth Cheney, serves as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Middle Eastern Affairs. Vice President Cheney's wife, Lynn, had, until her husband took office, served on the board of Lockheed, receiving deferred compensation in the form of $500,000 in stock and fees. Even President Bush himself has a Lockheed Martin connection. As governor of Texas, he had attempted to give Lockheed a multi-million-dollar contract to reform the state's welfare system. No wonder Lizzie wants more sacrifice from us. After all, she has investments to worry about. Then there's this in Common Dreams. Boeing also kicked in $100,000 of the Bush-Cheney inaugural fund, while Lockheed gave him $225,000. So when I talk about Bush and Cheney and their cronies getting rich off of a war based on lies which they never want to end, this is what I'm talking about. They should both be impeached for this alone, not to mention the hundreds of other things they've been, and they should be brought up on charges for. Okay, well, that's just some of the fun that we've been dealing with here at the Hollywood Liberal this week. As you can see, we believe that Bush and Cheney are keeping the war going just so they can continue to make money for them and their friends, like Lockheed Martin and Boeing, who are big Bush and Cheney contributors and who Cheney has lobbyists in the family working for. Here's what we're going to be looking at next week. On March 17th, there's going to be a big anti-war protest in Hollywood against this very stuff that we're talking about here. It's going to start at Hollywood and Vine around 12 noon. This is the 4th anniversary of the occupation of Iraq. It's taken us longer to get in there and clean this mess up than it did to get us in and out of World War II. I wonder why. We're going to put up some stuff from Answer for Truth and Justice, American Answer, which is one of the big anti-war groups that sponsors these things. I'll be there myself. We'll be doing some taping there, and that's one of the things we'll be getting into next week. We'll also continue on with the Scooter Libby trial, and we'll have some other great stuff as well. So until then, this is HL from the Hollywood Liberal at thehollywoodliberal.com. Check out our site all week, and we'll have more great stories for you. Thanks, and have a great week. Bye.